a real sad day here in our city. We have a lot of problems and we wake up to them all the time, and this is not one of those things that you could ever be prepared for. But our priority today is really supporting the families, the grieving families, as well as the displaced families, supporting our first responders. All of the large family really got hurt today, and we want to make sure that we're comforting folks in a real manner. That this speaks to me. It was something that happened really fast. I think our men and women responded and acted honorably and thoughtfully, did the best they absolutely could given the circumstances. And we're all heavy hearts today. You know, we have been taking our lead. You know, we have the fire chief as well as our men and women, but we are taking the lead from the fire marshal and the state police, and we will continue to do so because it's appropriate, and you know, we're doing what we can to support them in their effort. To that point, I'd like to ask the fire marshal to tell you guys all what happened today.
Before we do, I just want the chief to speak about his arrival from firefighters.
Afternoon. As said before, the 3:30 or so in the morning, the guys were called out to this building. The whole back of the building was burning. Interior was burning also upon arrival. The first two crews went in and tried to make it to the third floor. Two of the three members of that crew sustained injuries. One firefighter is burned in the face, the other has broken his foot in an attempt to kick in the doorways. They were pulled out, other crews were sent in, and the fire was overwhelming the building. Deputy ordered everyone out. We went to an exterior attack till there was the point that we could go back in again probably an hour or so later, and we were able to darken down the fire at that point. And again, as I said this morning, you know, there's a certain amount of what a human can take in a fire like this. The guys have the best of equipment, best masks, helmets, all that stuff, but it just gets to the point you cannot go any further. And unfortunately, that's what ended up with in today's fire. So, and to the fire marshal.
Thank you, Chief. I share the mayor's comments. It's a sad day here in the city. Driving up here in the middle of the night, it just brings back so many memories of other tragedies that we've had over the last number of years. We've done an awful lot in this state collectively to reduce the horror from fire and reduce injury from fire and death from fire. But situations like this continue to happen, and it really does cause me great pain as the state fire marshal. After more than 20 years, and you've seen the number of people that die in fire, it has an effect on all of us as fire service people, public safety officials. And I would just echo the chief's words. I had an opportunity to speak to several of the firefighters today and learn about their heroics. And with total disregard of their own safety, they ran into that building and they reached the third floor. And with the exception of some circumstances that I may talk to in a moment, the outcome may have been different, but it doesn't take away from what they did and how they did it. Be very proud of your firefighters, Mayor, as I know you are, and Chief, for what occurred today with them. We have completed our investigation. It was a joint investigation based upon investigators from the State Fire Marshal's Office, the Essex County District Attorney's Office, and firefighters and police officers from the city of Lawrence. I am here to announce a cause. We have determined a cause for the fire. First, let's talk about where the fire initiated. The fire occurred in the first floor apartment on the left side of the building as you look at the front of the building. And the fire occurred in a void space between a drop ceiling and the original ceiling in this building in that first floor unit. The fire burned undetected for a considerable period of time. And when the fire broke out, it broke out in two ways. The fire was adjacent to a vertical pipe chase that went all the way to the roof of the building. And the fire traveled vertically up that pipe chase. The fire also traveled horizontally out the rear of the building itself to the rear porches. And the fire took hold both vertically and horizontally of this building very quickly. and created a situation of an intense fire that burned through the rear porches and into the rear of the building at all units. When you look at the building today, you can see that the fire entered each of the 6 units from the rear with great intensity. There's some early on video that was taken by first arriving firefighters that we had the opportunity to see. And it's amazing just how much fire was in that building and on the outside of that building when the fire department arrived here. But we have reason to believe and thought that the fire burned for a considerable period of time, undetected, as I say, inside that building. The type of construction that we have here is not dissimilar to many of the buildings you'll see in this neighborhood and other urban communities, both in Massachusetts and beyond. They were originally built with high ceilings, and over a period of time, for a number of different reasons. Interior decorations, decorating, redecorating of the building, renovation of the building, running new wiring in the building, whatever it may be, many times the ceilings were lowered. And as the ceilings were lowered, it created this void space where the wiring occurred. And that is the reason that fire can go undetected in a building like this for so long. And we know by our lessons of nature of fire that when fire gets the oxygen that it needs, it takes off very quickly. And that's exactly what occurred here today. Again, there were very valiant attempts by our firefighters to get into that building. We were faced with one other factor. And the unfortunate nature of the apartments in all aspects, in all of the 6, but speaking specifically to where the youngsters perished, is the exit out of that bedroom was to the rear of the building. So by the time that the fire had occurred to the point of notification to the residents, those youngsters needed to come out of the bedroom to where they would face a wall of flame. The fire at that point, we believe, had already entered the building. So they weren't able to get out. That's what contributed to them being trapped, and quite frankly contributed to the fact that those heroic firefighters were not able to get into that room because they were faced again with this wall of flame that prohibited the further efforts of search and rescue. So pretty much what I have to say, it's an accidental fire, it's an electrical event. This was a good investigation. It was a quick investigation. It's backed up by the expertise of our investigators and our electrical expert who came to the scene and has verified and helped us determine the specific cause that we have here today.
So when you say it's electrical, can you be more detailed? Talking wiring up in that chase?
That's correct. It's a result of wiring, heating in that void space.
Was it metal clad wiring, any chance?
Yeah, I'm not. Where's Larry? Larry, why don't you come up here because if they're going to do this.
Wiring between the drop ceiling and the
That's correct. The
ceiling.
original ceiling is up high. Sometime over a period of years, this drop ceiling was put in place, and that wiring was either run at that time or existed at that time, but it was in that void space so that when the event occurred, it was not immediately observed by anyone in the building.
Anybody know how old the wiring was? Was it recently installed? Shut up.
No, identify yourself.
Larry Fisher, the Fire Marshal's office. Fisher, F-I-S-H-E. The type of wiring there is armored cable, typically known as BX cable. It was manufactured back in the early 30s, and it's still used in some forms today. It fails due to age a lot of times, and what we feel happened is that the neutral, which is within the conductor itself, failed, and the copper pipe became the path to ground and allowed for the heating of the pipe inside that space.
Are you saying that wiring was put in back in the 1930s?
Yes. And it just failed as an age?
It's an age.
But it wasn't being used.
It is being used. Yes.
What was it being used for?
Lighting and outlets within the home. It's used in many homes today. Many of these neighborhood homes, they have the same technique.
It's typical of, just as Larry is saying, it's typical of the type of wiring that you find in buildings of this age and this type of construction, as I said, all throughout our state. Electrical fires are a major cause of fires in Massachusetts, and so far this year in Massachusetts we've had 8 fatal fires as a result of electrical issues that have resulted in 15 civilian deaths. So it's something we continue to message on. It's something that we are concerned about. But in this case, it's not something that the most likely any of the occupants of this building would have known, and really there was no action that they could have taken. They were asked in interviews today if they observed flickering lights, if the circuit breakers were tripping, and the answers to those were no. So this is a contributing factor, but again, not as a result of anything that the tenants in this building have done.
Were there any
the
code
wiring up to
issues or
code?
anything along those lines?
No, we find a review by our code department at the Fire Marshal's office that from a standpoint of early warning and the alarm systems, that they appear to be what it needs to be. Again, in interviews with the occupants, the troopers have found that there is common answers to the fact that alarms were sounding in the building. They did provide what they were to do. And in the case of this wiring, there is nothing that would indicate that there were code violations. It's just old wiring that was installed at some time in the past.
Mayor, have you talked to the inspectional services department, your inspectional services department?
Yeah, I mean, right as we got on
And
the
what
scene,
have they said? What have they said about
to
this
go and
landlord?
check the files. Right as we got on the scene, we went and checked the files. We gave them to the fire marshal's office, and they did exactly what the fire marshal just said.
So you're comfortable from your end that inspectional services, that this building was clear, there's no problems or no
Yeah.
issues at this building?
Now, I'm also clear by the fact that the fire marshal also just said the same. They did their own investigation too, so despite what we would have already on file, which showed nothing, the fire marshal's office is the same.
Steve, could you kind of give us a picture of how you said the kids couldn't get out because of they had to get out the back way? I understand that the parents were able to get out. What was the difference between the way that parents are able to get out and the way the kids were not?
Sure. As I understand it, the parents were in the front bedroom. That would be on the very front of the house. Each of those units has some consistency in layout. So the fire is at the opposite end of the building from where the parents are. So the parents are able to get themselves out of the bedroom. The fire is not at that distance yet. It has not reached that distance. I'm sure they made valiant attempts, like the firefighters did, to get down and find that same wall of flame that I speak to. But they were able to exit and then go down the stairs, not having to face that exit area, which was so deep into the fire in the bedroom exit off the kitchen.
Now this sounds pretty much exactly to what you're dealing with the fatal fire in Lowell. So we know that these buildings are wired and constructed like this throughout New England, but is there anything that people can do, or warning signs or something?
Well, there is some commonality to Lowell in the sense that the fire, again, was in a void space, as you properly point out. Again, if people find that there are issues in living in buildings like this, they need to bring it to the attention of either the landlord or if the owner of the building, if they are the owner of the building, they need to deal with it.
But the attempt to get out?
Not something I don't want.
We need to
Out of
leave that to
respect.
the medical examiner.
Are you confirming the names of the boys at this time?
I don't
I am
know the
not.
names.
I don't know.
This is the point I think that's really important, guys. There's a family grieving right now, and everybody wants to know the names. And it's really not as important as the fact that we lost 2 kids today. So I would ask the press to stop asking for that, because the family is a new immigrant family here to the city. They're not as savvy as you guys are, so they're going to answer your questions, and they may do so at their own peril. So I just want to make sure we are sensitive about that. It is a moment in time where folks, the name is not as important as the fact that we lost 2 kids today.
Mayor, for people who want to help out people in the community, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, we through the help of the Essex County Foundation, we have an Lawrence Emergency Fund for events just like this. So if you're looking to make a donation, you can call 978-777-876. Again, that's 978-777-8876. But you can also go online, bit.ly.com/Lawrence Emergency Fund, or just go to the cityoflawrence.com website and there'll be a link there. Financial support, furniture, clothing, all those things are going to be needed in the coming days. This is a new family to our area, and they're going to need this support.
Can you say how long they've been living here?
Just that they're new.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all very much.